can I say about the month of June? I read a few books. Salutations, welcome to Loving the Language of Literacy. My name is Sophia Lee, and today I'll be doing my June 2015 reading wrap-up. So, June. June was not my best reading month. In fact, I believe it was my worst reading month out of the entire year. I'm not even talking about the quantity of books because at this point in my life, it doesn't really matter how many books I read as long as I'm enjoying them, as long as I'm loving reading, which is what it's all about. But this month, I just had absolutely no desire to read. I was on a 2-week vacation and during the end of school things were just winding down, so I really had no excuse in that respect. But I just was choosing to be on the internet instead of reading, which was really disconcerting to me, but I just moved past it and there are a ton of books I am so excited about reading in the month of July. Also, I ended up DNFing, I believe, 4 or 5 books. The month of June was just really odd, and the past 3 or so months have just been weird for me. As you know, I am a huge advocate for reading YA, and I love the genre so much, and I will bitch slap anyone who says that it is not as good as another one, or at least if they underestimate it or think it's something completely different than what it is. I've been having my own struggles with the genre because I found so many predictable ones. At the midpoint of the month when I read this one book, I was just so fed up with the genre that I actually stopped reading YA for the rest of the month, and I'm about to start a young adult novel, but it will be the first YA novel that I've read since the middle of June. So let's just cross my fingers because I love the genre and in no way do I want to give up reading it. I just had a lot of trouble. Anyways, moving on, the first book I read was Lying Out Loud by Cody Keplinger, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I read and absolutely loved The Duff earlier this year, and of course I had to pick up Cody Keplinger's latest release. There are 2 words to describe this book: miscommunication and misunderstanding, because that's exactly what happens. This book follows Sunny, who is somewhat of a pathological liar, and instead of trying to tell the truth, she just weaves a lie, which she finds really easy and comforting, and she's kind of built up the shell of lies because of everything happening on with her life. When her mom kicks her out, she has to go move in with her best friend Amy. The new boy at school, Ryder Koss, actually has a crush on Amy, but one night, by accident, Sunny chats him the entire night, and he thinks that she's Amy, which leads to a lot of trouble. Besides being hilarious, I enjoyed this novel so much because Sunny was just such a relatable character. She's going through struggles in life, she's trying to figure things out, she's trying to get the boy to like her, and she just felt like a character that anyone could relate to. I was a bit skeptical when they said that this book was a companion novel to The Duff. It was set in the same town, and Amy, who is Sunny's best friend, is actually Wesley Rush's younger sister. And we have Bianca and Wesley with their adorableness in the book, and I really enjoyed that. Next, to no one's surprise, I read The Air by Kiera Cass and gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I honestly don't even know why I keep reading these selection novels. I'm really just disgusted to say that there are selection novels, because originally it was supposed to be a selection trilogy, but now there's 2 other books. Anyways, rant over. This book follows Evelyn, who is America's Singer's daughter, and I just had so many issues with this book, mostly because while everyone loved to harp on America and hate on her, we all just loved her aggravatingness and just kept on reading because of it. Whereas Evelyn, she just frustrated me to no end because it seemed like she was just this emotionless person who all she wanted and all she focused on was the throne and how good of a person she was when she really, wasn't. It was interesting actually to see the point of view from her and to see if some of her points were actually valid with having these 35 men vie for her hand. I was imagining myself and what I would do in her situation, but at the same time, I really don't think I'd be half as aggravating as her, at least I would hope. It's also interesting to see America and Maxine grown up, because America is done being annoying in the way she was before, but actually she seemed even more annoying if that was possible, because she just seemed like the person she would have despised so much as a 16-year-old. Then I read The Prince novella, also by Kiera Cass, which follows Maxim. So the way the synopsis plays it out, you believe that you're talking about someone else that he loved in his past, when really this other girl from France was just in love with him and nothing became of it, and he said that nothing could become of it either. So I think the synopsis is really misleading, and I only gave it 2 out of 5 stars because it really did not add anything to the story. Then I read More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera, and I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I was actually very disappointed, mostly because I thought that it was going to be different, and at times it was just so slow and I felt like nothing was going on. I was also very confused with the whole plot twist / revelation at the end. This has been hyped up so much during this month, and Adam Silvera seems like just a great guy on Twitter, and from everything I've seen and heard about him. One day Aaron Soto meets this guy named Thomas who just moved in next door, and Aaron Darren, he does not have his life together. His family is in shambles, but he does have a great girlfriend. Meeting Thomas, he realizes that he's actually gay, and he goes through all these classic questions you go to when you make such a big conclusion. What happens is not what I expected, most definitely, and it's not in his favor either. I don't want to go into detail because I really believe that this kind of book, you should just read it with no information going into it because you just want to absorb it for what it is, and maybe your perception will be different than mine, but I would highly recommend it for an LGBT book, and it just wasn't personally for me. Then I read Extraordinary Means by Robin Schneider and gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I was really sad not to give it a whole 5 out of 5 stars, but it just really could not compete with The Beginning of Everything. This is the book that kind of just made me sick of YA because I guessed what was going to happen in the end. It was just aggravating. At the same time, I do have an entire book talk for it, and my feelings throughout the month have changed because when I did my book talk, I was still on the high from the book and I was still really exuberant and just excited about it in general. But now looking back, my opinions are kind of different. What I did love about this was that Robin Schneider is just amazing at metaphors, writing so plainly what we have so much trouble in trying to describe. Extraordinary Means also inspired a blog post of mine which was about the reading experience, and this particular one focused on airplanes. Then I read Nicola Yoon's debut novel, which is Everything, Everything, and I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars because I just had, again, so many issues with it. The gist of it is that this follows a girl named Maddie who is allergic to the world, and the only two people she interacts with is her mom and her nurse Carla. One day a boy named Ollie moves in next door and her entire world is suddenly flipped upside down and she's changed, and she actually has the desire to go outside and meet people and meet him and interact. I just had so many problems with this book because of the sudden revelation and just the fact that she never wondered beforehand and how just one guy could turn everything around. Even the synopsis set it up for her to fall madly in love with him. And I just really think that it was a nice premise, but definitely could have been done differently. Then I read a book that I actually misread the title the entire time I was reading it, and that is Me Being Me is Exactly as Insane as You Being You by Todd Hassack Lowry, I believe. I read this as same instead of insane, but I still think that either title would have been good for this book. What's interesting is that this is very thick and it took me forever to read, but that isn't the point. The point is that it was told in lists, and a lot of people in Goodreads complained about these lists and I thought it was misleading, but I actually sincerely enjoyed this. I am an avid list maker myself, and to have things put out so chronologically, I gave this a 4 to 5 stars, and I really didn't expect to because it dragged on for a majority of the book, and the plot didn't go many places. It only spanned actually over 4 days, but a lot of things obviously can happen in one day. This follows a boy named Darren who has a whirlwind experience with this girl named Zoe, and he falls madly in love with her through loving her and through missing her because she kind of disappears. There's almost a Paper Towns dynamic to it. Darren discovers about himself and just what it means to love and to grow up. I really enjoyed it, and it's just one of those books where you have this feeling of great relief and contentment at the end of it. Then I read a book which I've been seeing in Barnes & Noble for years now, and that is The Opposite of Loneliness by Marina Keegan. If you don't know, this is a collection of short stories and essays. What sadly happened is that she just graduated from Yale, for God's sakes, and she was about to go to her job at the New Yorker, but she actually died in a tragic car crash. The week she died, an essay she wrote, The Opposite of Loneliness, and went completely viral. I just loved this collection of essays. This is gonna sound so weird, but my favorite part of the book actually was the foreword done by a friend of hers that she knew very well. It was just because I felt so inspired and invigorated by who Marina was, and I would so much aspire to be like her, or at least have the impact that she did. This book is divided in half between non-fiction essays as well as fiction pieces, and what people also commented on Goodreads is that they liked her non-fiction a lot more. I personally thought they just packed a bigger punch in general, and the fiction ones I couldn't quite relate to because I'm obviously a YA reader at heart, and while I am sincerely trying to expand my genres and I really would love to read more, I just couldn't relate to the situation these characters were in. But the nonfiction part is absolutely brilliant, and I sincerely wish Marina Keegan had lived on so the world could see out her full potential. Then back to back I read my first 2 Nicholas Sparks novels, which were A Walk to Remember and Dear John. I really loved A Walk to Remember. I remember actually 2 summers ago I watched the end part of the movie with my mom in a Washington DC hotel room, and I just thought it was just such a good movie. I'm a sucker for a good chick flick, and that's how I started off reading Nicholas Sparks. What I will say is that I'm really astounded. For some reason, I thought that it wouldn't be narrated by a girl, and that I didn't think that he could write from the guy's perspective so well, but he gets inside his head, and it doesn't seem mushy or just overreactive, but it really, to me, just seems like his male protagonist genuinely and honestly care for these women in their lives, and I love the way that he portrays that. Also, if you don't know, Nicholas Sparks has a lot of religious tones in his writing. I'm not a religious person at all, but I wouldn't be deterred by it because the characters are the definition, in my opinion at least, of good Christians. They're not trying to impose their religion, they just are trying to be good people. A Walk to Remember, if you don't know, follows a boy named Landon Carter, who's pretty much just causing a lot of trouble. Gradually grows closer with Jamie, who is the pastor's daughter, and she's completely the goody two-shoes. They help each other and they learn from each other so much. The one thing I'd like to mention, and the reason why this went down, is because while I loved the book, I did not feel as great of an impact as the movie gave me, because the movie kind of hyperbolized some of the factors, and they made Jamie a little bit more likable and a little more realistic, and they just did a few things with the timing that made it less like the book and just more like an adaptation itself, which I completely respect, and they have the right to do that as being producers, but that's what made the rating go down. On the other hand, I gave Dear John only 2.75 out of 5 stars because I just didn't particularly like the story itself. I've actually seen the movie, and that's what really inspired me to read the book, because I just love the idea of a long-distance relationship with a guy in the military, like not for myself personally, but just to read and see play out. Obviously, there are so many different things that could happen with military relationships because of the distance, because of risking your life. It was just really interesting as a perspective to see Savannah and John together. I loved how quickly they fell in love, and one thing Nicholas Sparks can do is make it seem like they have known each other forever and that it doesn't feel like it's insta-lovey at all, which it totally is. But I just didn't like how it didn't even take until halfway through the book and then they were permanently away from each other, and then it took around 55-60% of the book where we're just dealing with John's emotions, John in the military, John going on leave, John dealing with his father. Maybe that says a lot to Nicholas Sparks that it isn't just a romance novel, but it's more of a person's personal growth. For me, this was truly an adult romance, and I just couldn't connect with it as easily as I thought I would. The last book this month that I read was This Book is Gay by James Dawson, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. This truly is just an explicit guide to people who are either LGBT or in the spectrum or queer. It really is just an amazing resource and a really fun read as well, because you have all these tips about dating, about hookups, about how to actually have sex, and the emotions are coming out of the closet, and there are just so many different things broken down chapter by chapter that this book deals with, and I absolutely loved it because I personally am a straight cisgender person, but I've learned so much through reading this book, and I would highly recommend it for anyone who is curious about or who is part of the LGBTQ community. Tell me in the comments below what you read this month, how your reading month went in general, and what your favorite book was. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Keep calm, read on, and I'll see you in a video soon. Goodbye! If you like this video and would like to see more of my face, you can click the subscribe button. If you enjoyed watching this video and seeing myself forget every character name that ever happened, give this video a thumbs up, and you can click any of the social media around my face if you want to follow me there. And I now have a Snapchat at SSL Loves Books, and I'm kind of obsessed.